71 years ago, a group of proud American men, many Alabamians, black Alabamians, white Alabamians, stood facing the greatest tyranny perhaps that generation had ever considered, and that was Hitler's Nazism. We didn't even know the depths of what was taking place as hundreds of thousands, even into the millions, were being sent by train out to death camps where they were killed and pushed into ovens. What a horrible scenario. But there was one opportunity to crush that Nazi regime. And on June 6, 1944, the clouds opened at just the precise time where American soldiers could land on Omaha Beach on what we call D-Day. I'm proud that my own dad was in part of the invasion of Normandy. But as I consider what happened in 1944, we see how a great evil was spreading around the world, but there was a defeat to that evil. We see challenges to our own culture today. We see a secularism that says Christianity has no place in our culture. Christianity has no place in our ideology. As we consider these truths, I want us to understand and to leave here today not all down in blue saying it's over with, but look around you and realize that God has raised up people who care about this. If God's put a burden in your heart to speak out on this issue, then obviously God has something involved. God is moving. Do you believe that this morning? How do we face difficult days? Well, think about Moses. The writer of Hebrews tells us that Moses chose rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to know the pleasures of sin for a season. But how could Moses face persecution? How could he have to leave Egypt? How could he face Pharaoh down by such power? Because in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, we find that Moses met the invisible God. He saw the God and he said, "And God, what is your name?" He said, "I am that I am." God revealed himself to Moses as the self-existing God. What about Isaiah? The prophet Isaiah, we understand, was martyred. The book of Hebrews talks about those who were sawn asunder. History tells us that that was a reference to the prophet Isaiah, who challenged Israel, who preached powerfully the truth. How did Isaiah speak before nations with such power? Because in Isaiah chapter 6, he said, "I saw the Lord high and lifted up." And he saw God revealed as our thrice holy God. Let's go over to the New Testament, and we find a man named Stephen who preached. And as a result of Stephen's gospel preaching, where he preached sin, condemnation, but then came by just as Pastor Cersei has done and preached God's marvelous grace, Stephen saw Jesus at the right hand of the Father. He saw the invisible God. Hebrews tells us in Hebrews chapter 11 that Abraham was able to do great works for God because he saw God, and seeing him who is invisible, he could operate by faith. I want you to understand, go to the Mars Hill passage in Acts chapter 17, and you find as Paul challenged those who believed in a multiplicity of gods, he said, "You've even put up a monument to the unknown God." I want to tell you about the unknown God. This morning, I want you to know that there is an invisible God who rules and reigns in the events of this world. And all will one day bow before him. And friends, as people who know and believe in the living God, those who know Christ as Savior, we come in prayer and we access the power of the limitless, self-existing, invisible God, to whom all will answer someday. So today, when you're frustrated at what comes out of Washington, D.C., when you're frustrated at the inaction of Montgomery, Alabama, I have some good news for you. There is a God in heaven, Daniel chapter 2 tells us, who rules and reigns. Let's call on God and access God. The Bible tells us in 1 John that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. Do we believe that this God's will to protect the institution of marriage? God hears our prayers. Let's access God and see God work. God can change the heart of a Supreme Court. He can change the heart of a legislature and a Congress. And God will mightily move in our midst. Thank you, and God bless you.